Hello, everybody. I'm Kelly. I'm here with Jeffrey. Jeffrey's hanging out in New Orleans. I'm in Phoenix. Jeffrey, you guys just had Mardi Gras out there, yeah?
We did. You want to see?
Was it a good time?
You want to see what I caught?
You caught beads?
Somebody threw a plunger.
Okay, that's strange and very different.
Isn't that great? Look at those water.
Yeah.
That's kind of strange. I just saw that. And it came wrapped up. I think they handed it to us, but it's one of
That's
the parades
awesome.
where they all do plungers. Gotta love that.
That's super cool. All right, well, cool. So anyway, we'll jump into our live stream here. We're waiting on a couple other people to join. We are doing a part 2 of the sales management live stream because we only got about halfway through last time, and everybody was just putting questions in the comments, and it seemed like a really good topic that people are engaged in. So I'm super excited to jump back in. We're talking this time more about motivating your sales team, especially in this busy spring, and like how to set incentives. What are some bad examples of incentives? Holding your team accountable and those sort of things. So if I haven't met you, I'm Kelly. I own Onlon. We specialize in digital marketing for green industry companies. Jeffrey, before we hop in real quick, I know you have a really big event coming up and I don't want to forget about it at the end. So why don't you tell us about the Summer Growth Summit real quick?
Summer Growth Summit, August 19th to the 21st, our 8th annual.
Ooh.
And yeah, I know, right? Ooh. We're having it in Cleveland. And so Landscape Management calls that a home game. They're based there. And Jerry Schill Grounds Management, 31 branches, is the host. I just did a podcast with Jerry, and so I think we'll throw that into the chat. Let me know if it jumps in there, and we can also put in the chat a link to register. This is a 3-day event, and even though Schill is a large commercial company, you're going to learn so many systems that are applicable, even if you're $1 million business doing residential. These guys are great at systems, and you're going to find so many R&D, rob and duplicate ideas that you can apply. Think about it. Any branch is $5 million. So while it's a big company, we're also going to be seeing how a $5 million company operates, a branch, and they have just great systems for that. Plus, we have other speakers from our community, other contractors just like you that have found the way and sharing their secrets. So I'm really excited for it.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, let's dive in. So where we left off was essentially we were halfway through the topic of sales metrics and goals. So my first question for you today is, how can sales managers address a lack of motivation or possibly burnout among their team members? And on that same note, are there things that people should not do that might cause that burnout or might cause that lack of motivation?
Yeah. Don't yell at your salespeople. Okay, does that cover this one?
Yeah.
So, obviously you have to identify the root cause. On the surface, oh, he's burnt out or she's burnt out or not motivated, but everybody is hardwired differently. Everybody has different motivations. The big assumption is, well, we're paying them incentives. That must be their drive or motivator. And it is so far from the case. So figuring out the root cause, I think it's good to look for warning signs in their results, lack of sales, in their behaviors. Why aren't they doing, sometimes people burn out and they change the sales process for whatever reason. It's quicker, easier. And then the burnout is the root cause, but it's the sales process that is causing the problems. You can look for changes in attitudes. So they could be burnt out or burning out while hitting their sales. You got to watch all three. We've been taught, Kelly, that there's good stress and bad stress. Bad stress is called stress, and good stress is called eustress, EUSTRESS, meaning things you love doing and you're doing a lot of it and you're go, go, go. Burning out generally is from bad stress. Hit a wall, I give up. And I think good stress is okay. You still have to manage it, right? and manage your team so they don't literally run on fumes. But, good stress, I think, is part of what drives us in the heat of the season. I do think that giving salespeople clear breaks is important, Kelly. Over the winter's done. But for example, a favorite of mine is over Christmas break. Hey, we're off for 2 weeks. Go home. But when you come back with 100% game face. So I think you think of yourself as a sports coach. With a team that you can think more baseball than football, I guess, but maybe either, where you got a bench and you can bench someone for a game and let someone else play. And so I think it's important for a manager to realize when someone needs a day off, when you want them to really just take that break. And so you have to manage it. You can do it corporately. You can do it individually. Look out for their physical health and their mental health. So here's some things not to do. Don't yell at your team. Did I say that enough?
Said it twice.
So winning is contagious. I think one mistake I see is that we give the new salesperson the bad leads, right? Because we don't care as much about them. And so, let them practice on it. But
they have to prove themselves.
But that does the opposite of creating a winning habit. You're just going to frustrate the heck out of them. So that's not really the smart thing to do. If you believe that sales is a momentum game, that you're getting no momentum, and really you're maybe even creating bad habits if it's a bad sales lead to begin with. You can't create good habits easily on a bad lead. Other thing, don't over respond in a slow period. Hey, things have cooled down for a week. Let me just throw more stuff on you. No. Let the natural waves be a cooling off period. Your sales team needs that, right?
You mean throw more stuff that's like ancillary duties, not sales leads, or what do you mean?
Yeah. Where you try to tweak. Why don't you go out and knock on doors for this week?
Okay.
When they have no clue how to do that and they're not good at it, and you're going to change. In a week from now, you're going to say, "Nope, stop knocking on doors." Back,
Yeah.
You use some of the natural waves as your management techniques to get things taken care of that are in the core. Don't be overly critical when someone is down. Did I say don't yell at your salespeople?
Couple times.
One of my clients has a brand new sales manager, and the person doesn't really have their sales management skills yet. And they've been modeling their behavior off of another manager who's sort of the hammer. And so this sales manager is trying to be the hammer, and it's not working. I'm not saying that he's yelling at his salespeople, but you can't just, salespeople are sensitive people. They need a sophisticated management. Don't yell at your salespeople. Don't just be the hammer. It doesn't really work. You've got to learn how to inspire your team. Don't assume that money motivates them. I said that before. I think this was eye-opening for me when I first learned this. I was working with Paul Reeder Landscaping. We're having our peer group meeting up at his place in a couple months. Great outfit, great team, great facility. And he had a salesperson who was having a bad quarter. And what Paul learned by really saddling up next to him, was that he wasn't motivated by money. He just wanted Paul to come out and see his work. Paul's the owner. That's what he wanted. That's what was going to motivate him. The incentive was not a motivator for him, although he made a lot of money and maybe was one of the highest earners in the whole company at that point, or the year before. And so you think, high performer, earning high commissions, money must be that motivator. It's not. Just a scorekeeper, and that's different, right? That's how you keep score and pay the bills.
So you have to learn their love language.
Yeah, there should be love language for landscapers. We have to have to come up with that. There's probably 10
Yeah.
love languages, as opposed to 5, right? I bet there's. And if you read the book Love Language at Work, you can't do the physical touch, so there's only 4.
Okay. That makes sense.
So I think we need at least 7, maybe 10.
Maybe physical touch is coming out to see your job site.
Well, attaboys. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go there, but right. There's probably got to be a love language for landscapers. This note to self here. I think you shouldn't overlook team dynamics. Team dynamics can have a big impact. Success and winning is contagious. Inspiration is contagious. Group attitude is contagious. So don't overlook how the team dynamics are operating and impacting an individual salesperson. And by the way, besides, don't yell at your salespeople. By the way, look in the mirror. Maybe it's you. So, you know, what's that expression? It's not you, it's me, right? You know, maybe it's not them, it's you. So you really have to take a broad look.
So what would be, if we are trying to motivate people, we're learning their love languages, one of them may be money. Okay. So what incentives do work? Like, what's the best way to structure incentives for salespeople?
Yeah.
We talked in part 1 a little bit about, you know, commission-based, high salary, you know, like all those things, but let's just dive right into incentives.
Well, let's look. Okay. I'm going to tackle it from a couple different areas. I was just running a peer group here in New Orleans, by the way, with another group of mine. We had a blast. I took them to Preservation Hall. I don't know if anyone's ever been there. Front row, Kelly, front row. And Greg Semmer's sitting right there. He's a big guy. You know Greg, right? He's sitting right there, front row. And there's this really, not frail, but a slight woman playing trombone. And when she did that, he literally had to back up. It was... so
you were close.
We were really, really, really close. It was such a great event. And so there's a guy in there, Tim, in our peer group. He runs a very successful company in the D.C. area. And he used to be in sales, corporate sales, software sales, actually. And he was an investor in the landscape business. And then he came in as the managing director and bought out he was the silent partner. He bought out his active partner. He came in and then took that guy's place in our peer group. And he said, corporate sales is a beast. He said, landscaping is easy. We all have it easy compared to corporate sales, where every quarter you're either selling or you're toast. They live in quarters, not years. And he said they would change my incentive plan every quarter.
Wow.
So if anybody complains about annual changes in incentive plans, we've got it easy in the landscape world. And so you're going to make changes annually, and your team should expect it. He said that they always raised your quota and lowered your commission rate. Literally. So he said the best way to make money, this is sort of interesting, in the software sales industry, is make your money initially early on the first year or two before they totally screw with your commission plan, and then move to another company and
go to another company and start fresh.
So crazy. So have good expectations with your team. Things change. We're going to change these plans. Don't think it's forever. I don't think change is ideal, honestly, but it is reality. And so commissions, those are your dogs barking, by the way. They're not mine.
It is my dog. Sorry.
All right. We all love dogs on here. I think paying on revenue is really the best, if you can do that. If they're estimating and it's custom estimating, design build, then you might not want to do that. It depends how well you have it locked up. I have a client, Kevin, in Ohio. Kevin, you know who you are. And he's got his estimating process so dialed in and reviewed by production that he can pay on top line revenue, even though they do the custom estimating. But the guy's a systems guy, really strong. And so, but not everybody can do that, in which case you have to pay on gross profit as produced. The other way to do it is to do gross profit as sold. It's just like revenue, but it's, one line down, and if you're going to sell $1 million, let me think how to say this. If you were going to commission on $1 million, by the way, 3 million is the new 1 million. So if you were going to commission on $3 million of sales, you might be commissioning on 1.5 million of gross profit, so a different formula. What I like about gross profit is it automatically takes care of low profit work like subbed work. Because a big problem I see, at least in install, is companies get in trouble when they don't think about the comp plan, and then somebody has a big year in terms of selling sub work, and it messes up the whole company, right? They make money, but the company doesn't sell enough billable hours and they lose money. And that it's funny how it just happens. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and it seems to hit all companies. And so selling on gross profit would help that. But there's other ways to set up systems around that. I think you have to be very careful, though. I'm working with a client in Washington State. She's a coaching client. She's in one of our peer groups. And her name's Sonia. Hey, Sonia, if you're listening. And she's about to set up a comp plan with an install person who can do has done a lot of sales, but they manage install. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Before you just throw on a commission plan, let's look at the bigger plan. So when you're comping somebody who's doing more than just sales, or even if they're doing sales but they're selling multiple products, you got to look at the big picture, decide what's the challenges you have with that person or that role that you want to get fixed for next year, because people follow the money. So don't just solve a problem with money like, oh, I don't want to, this is common. I don't want to hand out raises this year, so everyone's going to have to make it on incentives or profit sharing or whatever. You can play that game once, but you can't really play that game as a strategy. And so best to figure out what are the behaviors we want to confirm and the change in behaviors we want to happen. And then we can set incentives around that. And then if sales is part of it, we can tie that into the bigger picture. For example, if you're on install and you can upsell clients, that should be worth twice as much as help me with an outside lead. Not that I would ask a production person to do that, but if you're a small company, you might be doing that. No, I'd want them focused on upselling change orders, right? And so I would focus in on that. And I think people ignore that opportunity a lot, that the person in the field can actually make sales. Sometimes they can get higher margins. You know why, Kelly? They're just so dang believable, and they're so practical, and they know the nuts and bolts. Here's why the cost is this, this, and this, because here's what goes into it. It's kind of the opposite of emotional selling. It's like, no, I can't negotiate with you because I know the costs. Here's the cost, and so here's the price. But I think a lot of companies skip that opportunity or look past it. I think you also, so back to challenges, is year-end sales goal important, or seasonal sales goals important? So you can throw bonuses in on top of the commission plan. I need to make sure you're going to hit your quarterly sales goal, not just make it up at the end of the year. So we're going to get quarterly bonuses, or the opposite. Some salespeople push in the last quarter, they drop off. And so you might have a year-end bonus, or you save a percentage of the commission that they have to hit their annual goal to get the rest of it, one or the other. And so again, let's go back to the main problems you're trying to solve, because we're going to follow the money. It's not the motivator, Kelly, but it gives direction. I have 3 dogs, and with one of my dogs, I put the gentle leader leash on, where you wrap it around their nose. And so if they go out too far, it pulls them. She's always chasing rabbits. Money is like that gentle leader, right? When your salespeople go in all these different directions, money points them where you want them to go.
Yeah. Squirrel.
Squirrel. You could do tiered incentives. I do like that if I'm paying a base and I don't want to pay a high commission up front, then I could pay a lower commission. Hey, I'm making this up. your first million, you get X, but after that, I'm paying you X plus Y. I'm okay with that. Or if everyone's got a $2 million sales goal, but once you get over 2 million, you get X plus Y. That helps somebody sprint through the finish line. I think that's really important for salespeople. Sprinting through the finish line. Our our budget is based on that, and so I think we can do things to keep that happening. I like mini games a lot, and I don't think enough salespeople do that. Sales managers, what's the mini game we're doing here? It's just to keep things fun and interesting. It's not. Remember, money doesn't motivate. Points in direction. It points you like the gentle leader. It's not the motivator. I mean, it is for some, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, don't be lazy and think that that's the silver bullet. So mini games. Hey, this month we're going to focus on whatever it is, and whoever can go out and sell more of these, we got a little extra prize for you. People just things that get you excited and coming in and thinking every day, right? Sales needs to be kept fun. So, mini games. What do we want to sell? We want to sell, like if in maintenance, it could be a certain kind of application or service. If it's install, it could be lighting upsells. I'm just like coming up with ideas here. It could be a new product that we want to push. Hey, these next 2 months, right? For every outdoor speaker system you sell, I'm doubling your commission. And whoever sells the most, I'm going to install one in your house. Making this.
Whoa.
It keeps people going. Use the mini games. Don't make sure they don't distract people totally, right? Still got to keep people in the general direction.
And they should be pretty short term, right? Like you mentioned, a month.
A mini game, yeah. And then you can beat the drum every day. The most important mini game is converting install into maintenance, and that might take a quarter. But you have to enculturate that. But hopefully you don't
enculturate.
Enculturate. Well, inculcate is the word.
Okay.
Google that word. I bet it's real.
It is. Enculturate is. I have not heard that, but
like inculcate is probably the proper word. But we've got to ingrain it, and hopefully you don't have to revisit that once you've played that game. But most of you probably do. Non-monetary incentives can work, right? Prizes, things like that.
Like paid time off or something.
Paid time off, or a sound system in your backyard. I got 2 tickets to
a game. Yeah.
Tickets to the game. I don't know. Just, change it up. You could get vendors to donate things that you could use in your mini games.
I know a lot of my clients will use like their Site One money that they get at the year end to just use for their bonuses or their Christmas party giveaway stuff.
But my point is, let's say you're selling sound systems. Let's go back to this. You go to the vendor and say, we really want to make a push this next quarter. Would you donate out of your cost a system? We'll install it. Give us an extra system and we're going to make a game out of it with all of our salespeople. They'd probably say yes. You don't have to wait till the end of the year. You don't have to use your own money. I think you'd be surprised how vendors will help you. And lastly, in terms of incentives, the incentive of beating your peers should never, ever be underestimated. Selling the most this year, selling the most this quarter, selling the most in the winning game, in the mini game. Never, ever, ever underestimate the fun of beating out somebody else. So, right, all salespeople have their own goals. They don't even tell you their goals. You set their goal, and they have their own goal they keep. And so that's one way for them to win. The other way is to beat out everybody else and get bragging rights. I think that's true for production and for sales. Lastly, the incentive of being paid quickly and frequently. Pavlov's dog. If you don't know Pavlov's dog, look it up. But the more you can drop the biscuit, like some people will pay out quarterly. I don't think that's motivating. Could you pay me daily for my sales? That would be the most motivating. Okay, don't do that. But monthly, right? let's at least, I think monthly is a natural rhythm of, and then try not to have to wait a month before you pay people. So how quickly you pay and how often is motivating your team, or at least not demotivating them, right? It's the gentle leader. Oh, I got the payment. Now I'm reminded of what's important.
Right. So in theory, like incentives should kind of hold a salesperson accountable in theory, and maybe for some that works. But for others, like we do as sales managers, have to hold them accountable. And what are some practical ways to make sure that you're doing that as a leader?
So I'm just saying that to be nice. Accountability is misconstrued. It is probably the least understood concept in all of people management, right, Kelly? You know this. You ran your own landscape company for a while. Accountability is hard. And what I hear people say is, well, I can't fire the person. Well, you can, but put that aside. I can't fire the person. And so how can I hold them accountable, right? It's so misconstrued. By the way, my wife and I do this voice when we want to imitate one of our kids talking. This dumb voice. This is how we when we mimic one of our guys.
You mock each other, you mock them.
Exactly. So I'm now going to mock all landscapers. Well, I can't fire them. Well, you can, but that's not accountability. So it's really misconstrued. I think a really great definition of accountability is when you, and there's a few, but one of them is when you hold someone to account, when they have to explain what they did and why they did it. That's a nice basic form of accountability. When they have to explain, and sometimes that's just what people need. You're better people. They just need to talk it through, talk it out loud, get feedback where it's not allowed or it's off course or whatever, and a chance for that person to learn. I mean, if you have somebody who's never going to learn, well, they probably shouldn't be working for you. So I'm going to assume you can fire people. Let me just say that. Anybody who thinks that they can't is that's a whole separate live stream we should do probably. But so let's just assume they're in the circle of you want them working for your company and they're a good person. So explaining your results, explaining the variance, explaining what you're going to do about it, that is really a fundamental definition of accountability. And now let's get back to sales. So you have to figure out if the variance, the reason you have to hold them accountable, is due to lack of effort or lack of technique, or is there an externality happening? So there's internal, intrinsic, inside is effort. There's where the intrinsic meets the external, which is technique learned, and then there's a total externality. And so if you're thinking you have to hold a salesperson accountable, you got to look at all that, and honestly, you have to look at your own process, which I'm calling it technique, but really there's a fourth item there, which is process. Is your process working? Did something in the process break? And so really there's quite a bit to look at. But if you want someone to be accountable, Kelly, let's say you've got the right process, your technique is pretty good, they can show good effort, and you do have good leads. You want to foster ownership and transparency with your sales team. I like to have salespeople initially set their own sales goals. Here's what I think I can do. And then if it's too high, pie in the sky, and it's going to blow up on them, no. I want you down here. If it's too low, it's like, well, last year you sold twice as much. Why are you setting a low goal, or whatever the reason that it's low? And then collaborate on getting the goal where it needs to be. Everybody likes ownership. I read this book on motivation. It's probably on my bookshelf. Now I have to go look for it. I'll have to find out where it is. But, people having ownership, it'll come to me in a second. People having ownership of their world, having control, is one of the major motivators in the life. My son, who we would mock with our funny voices, I remember when he was 5, he's like, "You're not the boss of me." There you go. Right there it is. You want someone to be accountable? Let them feel ownership, which in my book, Become a Destination Company, we talk all about that. Maybe you can drop a link to that book, Meredith, free copy, where people can download that. You're not the boss of me. If you can get people where they can feel like they're the boss of themselves, which is why people go into sales to begin with, right? They want that. They want that independence. So fostering ownership, transparency, giving them the systems where they can then run and go and do, that is going to create a lot of inherent accountability. And Kelly, I think you're right, by the way.
What am I right about?
I don't think we're going to get through everything we kind of thought we would.
Oh, no, we're not. We're not. But on that same note, though, with accountability, if maybe they're not taking accountability. Maybe they're just underperforming. Maybe it could be one of all those things you mentioned. They're not trying their best or their hardest, or their systems suck, or they're getting crappy leads, or whatever it might be. But how should don't yell at them, but how should a leader address underperformance on their sales team?
We used to have this joke about this guy who I went to business school with. Somebody else came up with this joke, but we always talked about his management style was humiliate and fire, or I don't know, something stupid.
That sounds great. Let me go work there.
Exactly. Right. So that doesn't work, right? Humiliating and then firing. Okay. Well, you've got to have really good metrics in place for accountability, really good scorecarding. Monthly sales goals is sort of the standard. But if they're not hitting monthly, bring it down to weekly. Work closer with them. Hey, if you can, right? If you're selling $5 million projects, okay, those don't hit every week. But by and large, you've got sales goals and then sales activities, outputs, inputs, lagging indicators, leading indicators. And so you can manage somebody on both the outputs and the inputs. And if monthly isn't cutting it, then we can shift to weekly and put them on a tighter leash. I think that's a very important way to do it. And then you're going to spend more time with them to figure out why they're underperforming, right? Accountability could be public and private. Now, we shouldn't beat people. I don't know why I'm coming up with all these stupid motivation sayings, right? The beatings will begin in 5 minutes. Who's crazy with that? Yeah, you can't motivate somebody by shaming them in public, right? But you can do the leaderboard. The person is at the bottom, sees that. You can have mini games that they can win at. So there's public ways to get people going. But then you have to have the one-on-ones, right? So when a public discussion is enough, and where you need to have a private discussion. So I think balancing those two are important. And let's go back to that personal motivation. Could you imagine your top salesperson really wants your personal attention on the work they're doing as a motivator? You've got to figure this out. The love language of your salespeople. This is going to become a book. I can feel it.
Oh boy.
You can use personality profiles. And with ChatGPT, it's a lot easier to use them now than it has ever been. So you the personality profile, and then to get help of Chat to brainstorm with you. I think that's one of the best tools of Chat is a brainstorming tool. If you rely on it, you're toast. It's not that smart. I mean, it can be smart, but it's not that. Sometimes it's dumb. Sometimes it's just general. It's like, yuck. But it's a good brainstorming tool. And so if you do personality profiles, you'll probably have your person you use. You can also use Chat. And so really diving into that, to understanding what makes them tick. They could just be a wrong fit, and you're trying to make them fit. I've seen that a lot, where we're using a bit of guesswork to install them in the sales team, seeing what works, and then we're expelling them from the sales team when they're not working. And so don't keep somebody who's really doesn't like selling or can't close. By the way, maybe they can do part of the sales process, but not all of it. Should they be part of a team? And I'm not a fan of changing up your processes to fit your people, except if you've got somebody who's been with you for 10 years and you put them in a role that you shouldn't have done and they don't belong there, but they can do half of it. Okay, right? You got to work with what you have to make things work. And so but let's say let me go down that road a little further. So understanding what part of the sales process that they don't do well in, I think is really important. And I think we're going to address that a little bit later. Maybe I'm going to wait for us to dive into that, but I've sort of created a little
set the table
for that. Yeah. And we'll dive into that a little bit later. Let me just find myself here. I got some notes. So you got to look at lead quality. It changes a lot. It's up, it's down. And so that's something. And sometimes you just have to hire another salesperson. I'm a fan. Light
a fire underneath them?
Yeah, bring somebody else in.
Yeah.
Were they selling, but now they're not? Let's light the fires there. So I think a great sales manager is first to coach. Don't yell at your salespeople. They're first to coach. Then they're an accountability person second. And thirdly, they make the tough calls. So I think about that. Coach and process developer, process manager and coach, holding accountable second, and then tough calls third. And in summary, right, you have to address that person's effort, the person's technique, external factors, and then your sales process, which I think is rapidly and constantly changing with technology.
Yeah, definitely. So how are these sales leaders, these sales managers, the coaches, how can they all come together to create a community and a culture of accountability and winning?
By the way, we're going to take a break here while I put on my Jeffrey Scott hat. We are going to run out of time here a little bit. Do you want to ask your poll question before I answer your question?
Sure. So Jeffrey and I were talking right before we got on, and we were like, man, we got to come up with a topic for the next one. We have some ideas. We also want to hear from you guys. So if you have any ideas on what you're interested in learning about, what questions you have, what topics interest you, just throw them into the chat and we'll take a look at them.
So this is for the next live stream, right?
Yeah, for the next live stream. And maybe it could be a topic that you do a video on in between or something like that too.
Yeah. So we're gonna banter for 20 seconds while you are typing in the chat what you want us to cover. Do you like my new hat?
Yeah. Do you guys have an online store where people can order your Jeffrey Scott branded hats?
Soon enough. We're looking at different hats for this year.
Get duffel bags and purses and socks to match.
No man purses. I'm thinking about getting branded racing gloves though. What do you think?
I think a very select few people would really enjoy that.
I think a lot of people would enjoy that.
Yeah, okay.
I do. I really do. Or I think we could brand plungers.
You could do that.
Yeah.
100%.
All right. Are we getting some answers to live stream questions?
Not just yet. They're coming in slowly.
Yeah. We want to hear from you on the live stream.
We definitely want to hear from you guys.
And then I'm going to answer this question. I guess I'll answer it now while you're doing the live stream stuff. So your question is how to create accountability without feeling punitive, without yelling at people or humiliating them. Obviously lead by example, right? Admit your own mistakes, be flexible, show your ability to learn from them, right? self-assess your own behavior. Remember I said, maybe it's you, look in the mirror, the problem is you. Self-assess your own behavior. We want to get feedback from the team. Avoid ambiguity. We are not motivated by ambiguity and slow decision-making, soft decision-making. We like clarity. Just give me the rules and let me go do my job, right? And so bring clarity. Avoid punitive solutions. You don't motivate people. People like to avoid pain. That's true. That is a top motivator. But you can't create the pain by being punitive. That will create a backlash. Obviously, smiling helps. Using we language helps. Inspire. You inspire people by getting to know them personally and then inspiring them to future actions, not by blaming and shaming on the past, but by focusing on growth in the future and the opportunity. Every salesperson needs something unique, their love language. So for now, you're going to have to use the 5 love languages. And you could have a discussion with all your salespeople on that. It's a very simple book to read. You could all read it together. You could all discuss what your love languages are, right? If you want to know how to motivate somebody, ask them. They will tell you, right, Kelly? What motivates? If I was living with you, what would your love language be?
Oh golly, Jeffrey.
I'm sorry, was that too personal?
Yeah, a little bit.
You just have to say, do the dishes.
Acts of service.
Put your toothbrush.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Okay. And then if you know their weaknesses and you help them overcome and fix their weaknesses, a good salesperson will really appreciate that. Having honest conversations. Most people want to know the truth. Don't dance around it. Be transparent. So developing a culture where everybody can be honest with each other, whether it's one-on-ones or in person, I think really helps. And so these are ways to create that accountability. I really do think you have to assess someone on the sales process. And I kind of made myself some notes. I'm going to go look for them here. Give me a second. Okay. So the sales process in my world is the following. There's prospecting, which not every salesperson does. So it's still the first point, but put that aside. Number 2 is qualifying. Not every salesperson does that in your company. Sometimes it's a different person. But that's step 1 and 2. But put those aside. But for sure, everyone does building rapport. Know, like, and trust. And so building that initial rapport, absolutely critical. Some people are weak at that. You can't assume. That actually might be their weak point. And so they're blowing great leads because of that first step. The second step, again, we had 2 pre-steps. So building rapport, and then the discovery, asking enough questions to figure out their needs and their pain points. This has to be learned. Asking questions is, I'm a very curious person, man. I can bug someone to death by asking questions. And some people don't do that, or they don't feel they have the ability to do that, or they don't know what to ask questions about. They don't feel like they have enough authority to ask questions. 2 ears, 1 mouth, very important. And then the other connection to it is not order taking. I'd like a patio here. Okay, let me get you an estimate for that. No. Ask questions. What's the underlying need they're trying to solve? Maybe it's the ground is always moving and really they want lawn, but they've got a drainage issue, right? I'm making this up. So you got to teach how to not do order taking, which comes back to asking questions, needs and pain. So the whole discovery. Then there's presentation. They might be good at that and not great at the presentation part. There's handling objections is the next step. That needs a lot of training, and I have some tips on that. Closing. Not everybody's good at closing. Great at opening, bad at closing. I see it all the time. And so building rapport, discovery, presentation, objection handling, closing, that's really the core. And then, of course, the follow-up, change orders. And then there's some post-sales. So there's some pre-sales and post-sales that I talked about. but those are the core. And so if we have an underperforming salesperson, we really need to know, we need to be able to assess them on that rubric and see where they need help. Good sales manager does that without making you feel bad. I think a lot of sales management, is probably a lot like directing. You ever see movies on directing? Directors managing actors? Oh my God, that's got to be the toughest job. I mean, some directors are jerks, but so think about it as production, direction and production. There's a lot of massaging of egos that goes on to getting the most out of your high-paid talent. It's not an easy job being a great sales manager is not an easy job, which is often why they get paid the big bucks. It's a high-paying job in many organizations because it's, training and developing, recruiting, building the sales team, and then managing them. That's a lot.
So another high-paying job in a landscaping company might be an operations manager, and I know that or marketing, but I know from my experience there was sometimes times, and maybe this was just limited to my experience, and no one else can relate. But we face this issue of a sales versus production kind of battle, like the operations manager, sales manager. Not that they fought or hated each other, but sometimes they would point the finger at each other on why things weren't successful or so am I alone in this, for one, and for two, can this be overcome?
It's a big deal, and this might be the last thing we get to on our live stream. I'm not sure here. Let's see how long this takes us, even though I have a lot more to talk about, so I know what the next live stream will be about, but it's a big issue, and I don't think it should be avoided necessarily. We should not paper over conflict, especially positive conflict. We need to harness it. But having said that, I think we can make shared goals. We can tie goals together. For example, if one of our goals is revenue, we've got a revenue $1 million or $10 million or $30 million. Sales, marketing, sales, and production are all tied into that. Marketing has to bring lead flow and lead quality unless you're doing business development. Sales has to convert. Production has to do on-time delivery and even create referrals and upsales potential. So we should have some shared goals that we're holding these disparate groups accountable to. I think we can measure team impact, like lead to close rate. Lead to close rate is a marketing and sales shared goal. You might hold the salespeople accountable. They might be pointing fingers at marketing, bring them together. Customer satisfaction and repeat business. That's definitely a shared goal in many aspects of landscaping between sales and production. We can hold them accountable to that team goal. So I think some team goals is important. Now, you can still have finger pointing. And as a leader, you got to woman up, man up, put the big boy pants on, and knock some heads together, or, not accept the finger pointing, but get down to the developing collaboration. Clearly, you have to model it, but in the end, has to be a leader who bridges the two. I think you could also you have to do cross-departmental meetings. And I think probably most companies do this, right? But you could create functional collaboration to review results and also to plan the future, right? I don't know if that's something that you're doing in the winter, or it could be quarterly review. How are things going? What changes do we need to make? Again, you have to create the collaborative environment, but getting people to work together on solutions is very important. And then, team building. When you have your company parties, one from and I'm going to address your production and sales issue here. One from sales and one production. You guys have to team up and do the potato race against other sales and production guys. Make it up. But you can create environments where people really get to know each other personally. I find it's harder to point fingers at somebody at work if you spend time and get to know them personally.
So send them to happy hour together.
Sure, we'll go with that. Things like that, right? But not happy hour where they can then, salespeople over here and production people over here. That's why I like that. I work with a couple companies where when they have a company party, you can't have the food until you play the game. And the game is all
I love that.
Cross-departmental things.
I love that rule.
What else can help with this? And I know we're going to run out of time here.
We do have like one or two questions too, so save a couple minutes.
Okay. Real-time communication and feedback between these two teams, sales and production, will help. Encourage empathy through role exposure. This is painful. Salesperson, you're going to go do production's job for a day. Production, you're going to go do salesperson's job for a day. It's hard, both of them. But I think that's a real must. Empathy through role exposure will really be like, oh, I don't want to do that job.
Yeah.
So now when we're having our team meeting, I know how hard your job is. They'll each say that to each other.
Yeah, I love that.
Data is a great mediator. If you don't have data, your tension is going to be twice as bad. Using data, getting the two teams to look at data and discuss data and make decisions by data, absolutely key. Celebrating some of these team successes helps. And I would say, use data, but use empathy and shared goals and mix in some team building, and that will be a great way. Now, if you're just balls to the walls running and we don't have time for that, all right, you're going to deal with a fallout.
Right.
People always have time to fix problems. They don't have time to prevent problems. I could just mention as an example the health of the average person in America, right? Look at how much time we spend on the fix and not preventative care. So that's a whole different live stream.
That really is.
I think
we'd bring him a different expert, not me.
Yeah. All right. What are the questions?
Okay. So one question we have from Mark Watson, and this was from a while ago, and I'm sorry I missed it, but he asked, how do you determine someone's love language or what motivates them? Do you just straight up ask what motivates you?
I think a group discussion around that book is a great way to start. The problem with the love language the issue with the love languages is they're generic, and you can't assume when someone says quality time what they mean, for example, right? Or acts of services. It could be something very specific. And people have their primary and their secondary, and then they can switch, right? I was asking my son that we've been talking about what his girlfriend's love languages are. God bless the guy. He knows what we're texting. He knows, and he knows it's three things, and they change depending on what's going on. God bless that young guy for knowing this already. But having a discussion, Mark, and read the book, have a discussion, but then drill down. Don't ever assume you know what someone really means. Quality time might be, come out to my job sites once a month. Oh, is that all you want? I can do that. Right? So I think asking is the 1,000%.
A good start. Yeah. Okay, so Andrew Westrick, sales manager at Whispering Pines, once, and I'm not sure if this was actually a topic suggestion or a question, but in a soft market, how to help salespeople be engaged weekly in business development / lead generating activities. Okay,
we know Whispering Pines. We love Whispering Pines. If they're not naturally good at it, you're not necessarily going to turn them into business developers. If you mean, I want you to spend 20% of your day on past clients, okay, or 20% of your week nurturing relationships, okay, I can do that. Past clients, okay, I can do that. Some of your best salespeople may not even want to do that, but that's a deeper discussion. But I think it's your right to ask for that. If you want everybody to join one association and network there once a week, okay, I can do that. If you want people to become great business developers and they're not hardware that way, no, that's not going to happen.
Right.
So I would say you have to structure it. Like I'm just saying, 20% of your week is on nurturing relationships. And it could be current jobs to go sell them more. And it could be past clients. But if they're already doing current jobs, it might be maintenance clients and past jobs we've done. So give structure to it, because somebody in inside sales, and by inside I mean the sales come to them, that job is naturally structured. That's a totally different animal and job from a business development role, which is naturally unstructured. Really different personality profiles.
Yeah, very different personality.
So bring some structure to it.
We had a couple topics in here which we can address later. Besides that, I think those are most of the questions here. So yeah, I mean, yeah, tell me about the Summer Growth Summit before you go.
There's a super early bird discount, ends April 24th. You can save $400 per ticket. We have a pre-event now open to the public, plus the 2-day summit. So 3 days of learning. I am really excited for what we're going to learn. You don't get big by being dumb. You don't get big by throwing money at buying companies and, it looks so easy on the outside. There's really a lot of smarts that you're going to learn from these people at the summit. Whether you're an owner, a division manager, a production manager, a recruiter, a lot to learn. And we set up our tables by function. So if you're a salesperson, we're going to sit you with other salespeople. You will build relationships for life at our summit. So drop that link, come, do whatever it takes to attend. You're going to be energized to finish the year strong, and you'll be a lot smarter for it.
Awesome, Jeffrey. Well, thanks for joining. We'll get together and we'll chat about our next topic, which will be, I guess, in May. So
do we have the next topics flowing in there?
We have a couple of topics. We've got in a 4-season region, how to push sales in the off season outside of Christmas lights and dormant pruning.
Okay.
We have addressing selling in an environment that clients have limited disposable income and are very tight on their landscape budget, getting multiple bids and cutting some more profitable line items. Those are the main ones that I'm seeing here. We've got some questions. Yeah, we've got some questions here on overall general opinion of success on digital ads, which is more of a marketing topic. And we just had a lot of good feedback from people who discussed how they were paid and what their, what their incentives were, and were they salary, commission, and that sort of thing. So not really questions or topics.
I heard recently that Google search has decreased by like 1 billion searches last month, and 2
for ChatGPT,
and 2 billion from 2 months ago, and 3 billion from 3 months ago.
It's crazy. Social and ChatGPT. Yeah.
So basically, search engine optimization is going to become more important. Oh, yeah.
Cool. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, Jeffrey, great seeing you, talking with you, and thanks everyone for joining in. Have a great day.